Welcome, everybody. It's Ted Prodromo. This is Social Selling Television, and you can find this episode and past episodes at www.social selling television. And this week's guest is Bryan Rider, and I met Bryan a couple of years ago, and I've been going to internet marketing and marketing type events for probably 15 years now, and I've been to hundreds of them, I'm sure. Some are free, some you pay for. And what I noticed is a couple of years ago, I went to an event. It was a Frank Kern event, and I actually paid $10,000 for the program. It was one of the first big ticket items I ever purchased. I always went to the smaller end. I'd buy the $1,000 or $2,000 products, and I'd go to the conferences. And there was some good people there, but for the most part, people were there for hope. They weren't successful in business. They weren't successful on the internet. But when I went to this Frank Kern conference, there was about 100 people there. And it was like instantly you could tell these were all A-list players. These guys were making money. They knew how to grow a business. They knew how to start a business. They knew how to market. And Bryan was one of the first people I met when I walked in the door. And I want to welcome Bryan Rider.
Thanks for having me, Ted. So
tell us a little bit about your business and how you got started.
How I got started in like the consulting and marketing business is, when I was working when I was 25, I went overseas and I started figuring out I was really lucky in my early 20s to really figure out have an incredible mentor who, instead of going after shiny objects, he was realized that as long as you're focused on building relationships and that is your focus and contributing and creating value, you'll get to wherever you want to go. So I learned this and I adopted this very young age. And when he ended up doing that, I was in a internship at the time. It's a really funny story. So I was actually working at a cleaning company as my internship. And he said, just keep creating value, building relationships. And I did it the whole summer, and I created relationships with anybody because a wide range of people. And then after the summer, he was like, well, you just did what you said you're going to do. You built relationships. Here's the options. And so I ended up going to work in the Middle East for 4 years after that. And it was so much around just building relationships. And then I love travel. I love traveling. I've been to 51 countries. We're going to add 4 here in next month, which is fun. And just figuring out okay, what is business about? What are we really doing in business? Is it about trying to market? Is it about, and it really just comes down to building relationships and making a difference for people. And just that's really what got me started. And then in the marketing world, my experience has been where so many people are looking to just make money and short-term sell at the expense of long-term relationships. And so what I really saw is I was like, well, these businesses are doing it completely backwards. I mean, if you just go out and creating relationships as your main focus and you're just working on that in 6 months, 12 months, you don't really have to market anymore because you have so many valuable relationships and repeat customers. And that just, when I learned that, and then just doing that in my own business, it's just been I've been really passionate about teaching people that process.
I think the first thing you said way back at the beginning of that is you had a mentor. That is the key to getting started and going in the right direction. Because without a mentor, you're trying to figure this all out yourself. You're spending a lot of money that you shouldn't have to spend. Somebody that can guide you.
Think about this. And we're in the service business of helping people. And one of the first things, and I lost a good chunk of money, probably 5 years ago in making this mistake, investing in a business. And what it comes down to, if we're serving people and you're helping people and you're not willing to ask for help yourself, I've learned anybody that isn't under mentorship themselves or hiring consultant, anything like that, I run from as fast as I can, simply because if you're going to help people, you need to be getting help from other people. It's just the integrity piece. And without that, it's amazing how many businesses that I've seen that they're like, I'm a coach. And it's great. Well, do you have a coach? No, I don't need a coach. And you're just blown away because you're well, why would anybody pay you for coaching then if you don't see the value in it? And just seeing that mentorship is, I think, I'll have a coach for life. you know, in whatever areas that that I need support in, just because it's the fastest way to grow a business.
It's the only way. You really need someone to look over your shoulder, because we work on our businesses all the time and in our businesses, but you get blinders. And to have somebody looking over from the outside and says, they just say the simplest things sometimes. And they'll say, you're like, God, that was right in front of my eyes and I didn't see it.
Yeah. And even though I coach people on this and we consult with people on this, and I've learned I'm just as susceptible of doing the same thing, of getting, even though I coach people on it, I'll make the same mistakes. And so making sure you have somebody giving you that feedback, because we're just unable to see what's getting in the way. And that's just by the, human beings. That's the biggest thing, is we don't see what's getting in the way of them.
Yeah. And Armin says, making a relationship and making a difference for the people. Bingo.
It's that simple. It's so we were talking about this just a little bit ago. And so we're just finishing up a big deal in Europe. And everybody's like, okay, how do you go out and get, do a big deal in Europe? And I do work with, a very small amount, high-end coaching clients, good sum of money up front. And it's like, I didn't do that through an ad. I did it through building long-term relationships. And what people will miss is this has been about 2 years in the making of just developing the relationship. And I didn't know where it would go. What did I do? I just created value and made a difference for that person long before we ever talked about business. And then, that person's come back to me, and said, hey, well, I trust you, how can we put this project together? And that's really at the core of it. That's simplicity in business. And I have multiple deals over there and possibilities now. And this one just went through, it's actually business in Ukraine. And you're like, that's it. That's really all it comes down to, is simplicity, long-term relationships, and making a difference.
So let's take this new client, for example. How did they find you? How did you provide all this value? Take us from beginner's level.
So beginner's level, how they found me was, interestingly enough, so this is like probably three levels of separation. And I met somebody online. I believe it actually initially when I met this person was through LinkedIn. So, and I was just going out making a difference for them. And then with that, I met one of their friends. And I just had a conversation with one of the friends, kind of told them a little bit about what I do. And that never went anywhere from that standpoint. And then probably, though I stayed in touch, it wasn't like a one-time thing. I just stayed in touch. I called them, and made a difference for them. I referred them. One time I referred them a few clients, and just was a person of value and didn't want anything from the relationship. And then, a couple months ago, they're like, hey, we're going to hire this team. It's going to cost us about $20,000 a month. How can you help us with that? And I was like, yeah, great.
Easy.
And
I wish two things that are really important there. You called the person to check in, just to, keep in touch. And that doesn't take long, a couple minutes. You say, hey, how you doing? Haven't heard from you in a while, just checking in to see if things are okay.
Yeah, and I think, it's like LinkedIn. We talk quite a bit about LinkedIn, of like what makes LinkedIn work. And everybody wants to know, hey, how do I get highly qualified appointments? So that's all the rage out there. I think if you look at your Facebook news feed, highly qualified 7-figure businesses. And that's what's being sold. And in reality, it's done through building relationships. I mean, I have two, I don't know how many actual personal millionaires I have, though I have two that come right to the top of my mind, and they don't even have a market. They don't even market. They just go out and they have relationships and, multi-million dollars of business. And it's just, that's really how business is created.
So getting in touch with people, finding people, LinkedIn is, like you said, it's a gold mine and people don't realize it.
I think what happens on LinkedIn is everybody's like, I think there's this big misnomer that you can just go out on LinkedIn and blast it's just like, you know, when you send the friend request and then you get the message like, this is everything I do and do you want to buy? It's almost like a cold call. And there's a big misnomer that that's how business is done. You know, versus if you look at building good relationships and creating value, obviously you have to be able to create an experience where somebody wants to work with you. You know, if you can create one valuable relationship a week and make a difference for one person and then continue to follow up, you know, in 6 months, you stop marketing because people are out there supporting you. You know, and it's so much easier to do business on relationships. And how much were you saying, Ted? We were talking about this, is how much of your business is repeat or long-term relationships?
Yeah, like 80%.
Yeah.
We're kind of guessing, but it's people that have been on my email list for 5 years, some people,
yeah.
and they never bought, and all of a sudden they become a client.
Yeah. Mine's 80, probably more. If we are looking at revenue value, it's definitely more. And you just look at that. That's what it looks like to you build relationships and you continue to, and everybody asks that. It's like invisible selling without selling. And it's like, well, if you know how to create an experience of what it's like to work with you very quickly, and then you're out building relationships, it's almost like a natural process. It's simple. It's really simple. And I think that's what people miss of it, is they want to go about by 1,000 shiny objects. And there's more shiny objects today than any time in history.
You said something about a great way to provide value, probably the best way. You met somebody and you gave them a referral or a couple of referrals, and you weren't expecting anything in return.
Yeah,
That's huge.
Yeah, and so one of the strategies that we teach is like, okay, you need to have $1 million business, you need to create 25 powerful relationships with people. And if anybody's on my, people will know this. I teach this, is 25 relationships where you are referring business back and forth. Maybe they're a client, though that's the type of relationship you have. And it's not about the money. It should be somebody that you would hang out with and you would talk to regardless of business. And if you have 25 of those, it becomes very, very difficult not to make $500,000 or $1 million. And people will go, well, how is that? And it's like, well, if that's how you're walking through the world and you're just constantly creating value, people will flock to you.
That's really incredible. You just said 25 good relationships, really. And I get clients that call, they contract with me to get 1,000 leads a month on LinkedIn. I said, why do you need 1,000 leads a month? How many sales can you close? Why don't you learn to sell better? But if you focused on 25 people and build strong relationships, you'll have more business than you can handle.
Yeah, I think, what happens on LinkedIn and or any platform is we want to, because we can go to the masses. And unless your business model set up for that, is, probably the best salespeople in the world. I work, one of my clients is a software as a service salesman, and he's doing about $70,000-$80,000 a month, and he does the same thing. He has his top 25 relationships, and then he's constantly has like a top 150 too, that he's constantly calling new people and bringing them into that relationship. And that's like, for one salesperson, that's about the max that they can do. And that's a proven system in software sales to be $1 million earner over and over, proven over and over that. And it's the same thing in business. It's the exact same process. And if you just focus on that, it works. And all the other things that you can do support it, though at the core of it, that's the easiest way to really build a long-term strong business.
And that's what people get confused, is they think with the internet. In the old days, we used to have to go meet people in person. We'd cold call, and you had to meet one person at a time. People with the internet think, well, I can reach millions of people now, so I'm just going to focus on blasting my message out. But they don't do anything once they blast the message out.
Yeah, or it becomes like a one-way, and you look at that, it's a one, you can get 100, 50,000 people, and it's a one-way conversation. It's like you're talking at that person the whole time. And if you think about that, is how much do you enjoy, like, think about going into a room and sitting down and somebody talking at you for an hour straight. I mean, how much fun is that for you? And it's the equivalent of what everybody's doing. And then instead of like understanding, asking questions and having empathy, it would be the same as like telling them all the things they're doing wrong. It's like, it's almost like scolding them. And you look at that and it's like, what type of, like, try that. Like, I don't, I can, being a parent, and I'm not a parent yet, though, you see this, it would be like talking to your kids and scolding them and not having any action, and then expecting them to do what you'd like them to do.
And those are the kids that act out the most, the ones that have the dominant parents that are just constantly yelling at them.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's, though, you would see it would never work in a relationship. And so I don't understand why people in business think it's anywhere different. That if you just constantly talk down to people, because it really is at that point, not getting feedback, that would ever turn into a strong business.
It's like I tell people, like, we go to a networking event and you meet somebody, and they shake your hand, you exchange business cards, and then they just start talking about themselves and how wonderful their car is and how much money they make, and they have a big house and want to buy my products. You want to run for the hills.
Yeah, so you can do the same thing. That's really like what people do, and you just see there's no, it's the value's missing there. There's not the value created. And like, my biggest experience of selling is if you tell people what you do versus creating an experience and letting somebody kind of into that experience, it never works. And those people are always wondering. It's like, you tell them, okay, go build relationships. And they're like, well, I'm out talking to all these people. I'm out doing all these tactics. I'm posting 80 times a day on social media and Twitter and all of that. And it's like, great. And you're talking you can have a million people. And if you're talking at a million people, it doesn't work. Just because you have more of them doesn't mean it'll work.
So tell me more about this experience. That's a good one. It's like Starbucks doesn't sell coffee, they say. They create an experience. So how do you create an experience for your potential clients?
So, and this is, I think, in my opinion, this is the most important thing in business. I sent an email out to my list probably a week ago of, some of the people that are that are in one of my memberships. And I said, if I could credit getting, working across the world, is one, I would say relationships, and then going out and creating an experience of what it's like to work with me and what it is that I do. And every business that we own or we have interest in focuses very, very clearly on, instead of describing it, I would put somebody actually into the experience so they could kind of see, okay, this is how I would solve, this is how I would solve the problem. And it's so much different than talking at people, because, this elevator, we're taught these elevator pitches, and you can do that. And immediately you have to start asking questions to demonstrate how you can help them and kind of show them that you can help them go out and get results. So I guess, an example, example would be, so in coaching, we'll do a little, you're going to make me go off the cuff here. And I know a little bit about you, Ted. Maybe I'll set an appointment with you here. So it'd be like, we'd be talking, and I know you are, you have a couple of very successful businesses, and you're so much about creating value in relationships. So if I knew that and I wanted to create the experience, I would say, if you were to ask me what I do, and it was centered around somebody who's really has a vision and they're figuring out how to go from, say they're at 100,000 to 1 million. Typically in coaching, clients are somewhere between 100 to 300,000. They want to go to 1 million. Typically for the high-end coaching, that's just kind of what I do. So, and I'll ask you a couple questions, because you're going to have to be the, with this to role play, because it'll help. Hopefully, it'll help bring out the experiences. So I would say, well, what I do is I listen to you in a way that you've never been listened to before, and then I help you get really clear on what it is you would like to create and why. And even if that seems impossible, and then I'll help you flesh out and go out and create that in the real world. So that would be kind of the hook. And then I'd say, well, so Ted, tell me a little bit about where you're at right now in your business.
It's interesting you say that, because for years people have asked me those questions, other coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't put it into words what I wanted for my life and my business to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize now I'm living exactly what I've dreamed about, is I can work from anywhere. I have flexibility. I can work, I can work 10 hours a day, 20 hours a day, and then take 3 weeks off.
Mm-hmm.
So I created this, but I couldn't put it into words on what I wanted.
Yeah, and you've done.
We've talked about this. Freedom is the word we all want.
Yeah. And so if you were describing that and say you were saying, hey, I would like to, this is what I'm looking for. I really want this business XYZ. And so creating the experience would be, well, what I would do is help, figure out exactly how many hours a week you want to work and really define that. They'll also talk about the difference you want to make, because that's a lot of times missing in the process. And what makes business work is you have to contribute and getting clear on that contribution. And then, so what is it, do you have, and I would go, you could see how I'd create the experience. I would be asking questions. Instead of getting away from money, what is it that, you really want to make the difference in the world? And then I would demonstrate, like, this is how I would help you. And I'm not even selling to you at that point. I'm just creating an experience of me listening to, by the way, your whole experience is listening in a way. I listen, and then I just demonstrate how I would listen to you and help you flesh it out. So basically telling you what I'm doing in a minute.
We're having a conversation rather than I don't feel like you're grilling me. You're not trying to sell me anything. We're just having a conversation.
Yeah. And that experience, if you can get clear, if anybody who's here and watches this, and if they get clear on, you can create that experience, you will want to talk to people as often as possible. A lot of people are really afraid in conversations to go out and talk with people. And if you really master this experience of how to create this experience with people, you'll want to talk to everybody, because you realize it's irrelevant of what I do. You could care. So if I'm a coach, you care less if I coach. Now, if I create an experience of you being helped without, and being supported in the way that you'd like to be supported, well, that creates interest. And even if maybe I could say, hey, does that sound good to you? We could talk about it. If not, you know what that experience is like. And I don't know how many referrals I've gotten from just demonstrating what it's like to work with me. And somebody goes, you know what? I have a friend who is stuck here. Can you go talk to them? And because it's not at that point, it's that experience of where somebody's stuck, helping them move forward.
If I've known you for a couple of years now, and just watching you and seeing you do this, you have a genuine interest and curiosity about people. Mm-hmm. You just come up to people, you have a nice demeanor, and you just start talking to people and asking them questions about them. You don't talk about yourself much at all.
Yeah, it's
a huge
not
factor.
And it's funny, you could do this, and I did this I learned that really early on. It's like you go into a conversation and you ask a lot of questions, and people love you, and they're like, oh my gosh, he's such, and then, and they don't even know that, because they got the experience of being heard, which is totally missing, in the marketplace. It's, when we look at that everywhere, it's arguing. And so they've been heard, and they love you because they're like, I don't know what it was. And interesting enough, people believe you that you can help them at that point. They know nothing about me. It's always interesting. And now, I could back it up, traveling the world. I've worked with some pretty incredible, a couple billionaires, prime minister, incredible client list. And I don't like, and I may use that just as a reference point, that it's more to say, yeah, this works really, really well. It's not because I have some big ego that I think I'm special. It's like, no, I just go out and help people. Though that's the type of things that happen when you can create an experience and then just generally be interested in people.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my high tech days, I used to manage 75 tech workers, basically, mm-hmm. desktop and network support people. And they would come in and talk to me. They'd have big issues with one of the users or some big problem. And I would just listen. And I just listen, and they'd kind of vent. They'd go off, and then I just say something like, "Oh, what else could you do?" Something like that. I wouldn't answer the question for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd go, "Oh, that's it. I'll try that." And that's why I became a coach, because I love doing that. I just listen like 80% of the time, make a few comments, and let them make the decision, and they run with it. And you're kind of doing that with the way you do your invisible selling, as you call it.
And it works because really if you're talking at people, you're really diminishing their value.
Yeah.
Versus like if you're listening to people, I mean, the way I look at it, people are more than capable of being successful, and more than likely they're just getting in their own way a little bit. So if you can help them take out those roadblocks, that's really the job of a coach. Is there's things in the way. A coach isn't going to tell you how, like this is what you should do in the world, though a good coach just kind of takes out the roadblocks that are in the way, so you enabling somebody to be successful, versus the other direction that people do of like they're the other direction people go is they're constantly telling them, and then if somebody does it wrong, they're like, hey, you're doing it wrong.
Right. So James says, show don't tell, like a fiction writer does, right?
It's so that it's the experience. I mean, well, we look at like that, so we described it. I don't even know, I just did that off the top of my head. It would have been more fun if you were, you're working through something specific, though. Yeah, that's what people love. And people go, wow, I was empowered in that. Because really at the end of the day, it's like, if you're going to, at the core of coaching, if you're going to empower people to get clear and enable them, well, if you don't do that in the first minute that you're speaking with them, there's not integrity there. So it's like, I need to match, the experience that people have with me very early on to what it is that I do. Because, if there's a thing, if you say, hey, I'll help you with that, and people, what they experience of is like, they don't experience that same piece, well, you'll lose them forever. And and you realize that's how you build trust in a relationship. You just start demonstrating that you do it. And you can do it through marketing, though it's easier to do it in relationships because I can ask questions at that point and I can really get to know the person. It makes it very, very easy.
Yeah. Yeah, if you just really help people, offer to help with no expectation of returns. Like yesterday, I was talking to Alex Mondosian. He's doing a big launch right now, and he's like right in the thick of it. So I texted him. I said, hey, Alex, if you need coffee or any food, give me a holler. I'll bring it to you. And he called me like 2 seconds later. I know he's in the middle of a million things. He goes, I genuinely appreciate that. I mean, you really care. And we joke because we have coffee together a lot. And I know he likes coffee. I said, if you need anything at any time, just call me. I'll drop everything and I'll help you out because I know you're in the middle of this. He goes, I haven't seen my kids in 2 weeks. And we just started talking like that. He goes, I really appreciate what you just did, that simple little task.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and you look at that, and it's always that simple. It's always if we could just, I almost wish sometimes like if people could just do this first and they realized how simple it was, because people would have a lot more successful business instead of, and you see all, the other way is everybody else that is doing everything else. It's because they haven't got good. They haven't figured out this whole relationship part, or they're in a relationship. It's not really a relationship. They're there to try to get money from that person. And that's the only focus. And until you bump around for a couple of years and struggle to create money that way, people are probably going to actually believe that.
Like some people don't know how to build relationships anymore as much. The simple thing like the happy birthday, say happy birthday on LinkedIn or Facebook to people. Almost all the time, so at least 40% of the time they reply to me and say thank you with a personal message.
Yeah. No, definitely. And that's just, it's amazing. Like that's what people are getting away from. And, so the people like you see successful on LinkedIn, what do they go out and do?
It's everything you've been saying. Don't focus on selling, focus on building as many relationships as you can, nurture those relationships.
Yeah. And it's
generally care about people. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's why you're successful on LinkedIn, and you know, and it doesn't matter what business, like, you know, when you build those relationships, you could alter your business model and those people stay. And it's just so, you know, that's why LinkedIn is so easy to be successful on. I believe it's so easy to be successful on because you can target the right relationships. Though you see what people want to do is they want to get these highly qualified, you know, and I look at this, people like, I want highly qualified appointments with decision makers. And that sounds really, really good. And I found that's good for two things: is anybody that's going to be a really good long-term client, very difficult. You'll get a few that way. And that's the best way to get a client that's an absolute nightmare, that, you know, to work with, like long-term, you know, because it's the same thing. If people don't kind of understand and know how you operate, and then you go out and you hard sell somebody and then it's a bad fit, well, whose fault is that? You know, of course, you know, people want to blame it on the customer, though. It's like, well, look at your sales process. You know, you deserve, you know, you're just as at fault because of your sales process.
Right. Yeah. We were just on a timeshare presentation. I wrote about it last week. We were in Mexico, and it was the incredible hard sell where they just came at you full force from the beginning. It's like, sure, they're going to sell some people because they're intimidating them. People were actually scared. It's like, but you're not going to get happy customers then.
Yeah, you look at like, so everybody asks, you know, why don't you hard sell? This is a great question. Is the only people that are going to buy when you hard sell are people that are very timid and they're very scared, and it's like a kind of from a, you're like forcing yourself on them. So very timid and scared people, though, those are the people, and I see this all the time. I don't know how many masterminds I've seen people, and it's a bad fit, and they kind of got forced into it, and they don't really say anything, and then it's like a dog, like getting angry, and then they just bite, and they get so angry at the person, and then, you know, blow up everywhere. And you're like, well, look at that. That's the type of people that you're attracting with beating over the head. I mean, it's like, you know, if you want to beat people over the head and hard close people, don't be surprised when somebody does the exact same thing at you and screams at you, or anything like that, because you've created that.
We see that a lot in the internet marketing space. We've both seen it. People are selling hope, and there's desperate people that pay a lot of money that they don't have. They can't afford to spend $2,000 on a product, but these people are, the sales process, they just really play on their desperation. Yeah,
and there's a few, I can count them on one hand, that people that I think that are incredible, that really genuinely have, are incredible in that space, and that's what, the rest of the people, that's what they're doing, and it's just, you know, and then they're frustrated, you know, and that's, you know, it's like anything, they just turn it on their cut. Well, you didn't follow through. I remember for, like, I think it was 2014, 2015, where, like, you just need to take massive action type thing. And I was just like, well, that's an easy scapegoat to say, well, you have a terrible product and you're not good at getting people results. And if you turn it around on somebody who's fearful, well, then they're probably not going to say anything. And you turn it around on a business, like a true business owner, that's what's going to happen. And then look at, like, you know, we're in the business of keeping people, you know, long term. If that's how you start the relationship, like, that's the ego that comes into how well is that going to work long term? I always ask people that, like, so you beat someone over the head long term. You know, it's like, you know, it's like, you know, imagine doing that to one of your friends. It's like totally talking them down, and say, what does that do to the relationship long term? Well, they'll talk behind your back, and, you know, it's just what happens.
Yeah, that's like a couple that's in a marriage where they just are screaming at each other all the time. You know, it's just not good.
I dare anybody that's married. I dare anybody to do that. I would never. My wife would kill me.
So. Yes. So today's guest is Bryan Rider, and if you have questions for Bryan, type them in the chat window, and you can.
Oh, we gotta have some questions.
Pick his brain. So, what are 3 ways you provide value? Referrals is one. You mentioned that.
There's 3 ways that I provide value. Referrals. There's so much value in listening to people. and just being honest and listening with people. There's just so much value in that, in the relationship. I could say, I mean, there's lots of things, we give away a lot of free content. We support people. And so much of value is listening to people and just being there with them, and not listening in the sense to like tell them what to do, just like hanging out with them and just listen. It's kind of hard to describe. It's like just listening. They'll just get to know them, get in their world. I think that's one of the most valuable things you can ever do to somebody. When I was in the Middle East, I put together a big program to help people who were illiterate, and really wanted to support them. And it was like, up until that point, I was like, oh, how can I help them? Instead of just like, what I did to really learn was just hang out with them and just listen to them of what was in there, instead of, and it's the easiest way to start a business. Instead of thinking what they need or what they want or knowing better, you just hang out with them, get to know them and listen, and they will tell you exactly what they need, or exactly what's getting in the way for them, what emotions are there. And then from there, you can start, like, they'll literally tell you what they need. And then, you can just help them from that point. And if you're not able to help them, and you don't know somebody, you can either refer them. And even if you're not able to help them, they will always remember being listened to. Something about, like, people are like, okay, I go talk to 100 people. If you listen really well to somebody, that person will listen, and refer you and remember you years down the road.
It's sales 101. Listen 80% of the time and talk 10 to 20% of the time.
None of this, and the interesting thing is, none of this has ever changed. It's like, it's always, because I was really interested in this, because I'm like, now I see social media, and social media is valuable, and you can build relationships with it. And I'm like, you just see every kind of era that something gets in the way of just being really, really good at creating relationships. And it's always these new shiny objects, always new shiny objects. And you can see, if you know how to build relationships, you look at them and you're like, hey, I could do that. These shiny objects, though I don't really need them. It's like my coaching business full. I don't really need a shiny object. And it's the person whose coaching business isn't full is chasing the shiny object. And it's because it's sold as that's the solution to all your ills. And then you look at that and it's like, well, you have that problem because this relationship, and it is selling one-on-one, and you have to become effective at that to grow a business. There's no way around it.
Yeah. James has a question for you. Can you address the immediate need for sales that drives direct sales process mindset compared to relaxing enough to wait out the experience?
Well, I think there's a big misnomer too, is if you create that experience for somebody right away. We're not just saying build relationships. Like, what the experience we were talking about is, if I create that experience, like say you're struggling with something, and I demonstrate how I'm going to help you, you'll be shocked at the amount of people that you'll have another sales conversation with right away. And there's the part, you're selling without selling, because they've experienced how you can help them. And some people will be like, hey, when can we talk again? And that's a small percentage of what you do. And you'll get, interesting enough, by just creating an experience without trying to push to sell something, you'll be percentage-wise, you'll be a little bit higher than like cold calling, asking for sales. And so you're not, that's where I think people in this process, they're like, oh, you're leaving money on the table. Well, if you do a good job up front, you're going to get the customers that are ready to go. And where the long-term value is in the long-term relationships. Though you're still going to sell a lot on the front right away. So don't think that this is like sacrificing sales up front.
It's kind of like planting seeds, and it takes time for them to grow. When you start these conversations, people remember you, they depend on you. Then when it's time for them to buy, this closing process is a lot easier than pulling teeth. Whenever you're really trying to sell someone and close hard, it doesn't work out
objection
usually.
handling. Somebody asked me that, because I just finished up a sales product. And they're like, how much of it is objection handling? And I was like, none of it. I was like, if you don't know, if you're not listening to that person, and yeah, you can talk about it, and it really is like, if you're not just like listening to that person the whole way and providing clarity, it's like if you really have to hardcore close somebody objection hand, I'm like, something's missing. Something is missing, and that's the difference of where, if you feel like if you get in a spot where you have to like really push on somebody to buy, and is something's missing along the way. And up front, some people will be ready to buy right away and there'll be no resistance. Though the less you know people, the harder it is, because it's the trust factor. So yeah, you should be able to. I mean, I don't really teach. It sounds crazy. People ask me, I'm like, I really don't teach that. I teach like if somebody is clear on, if you're having a lot of objections, so you didn't create a very clear experience in the beginning in demonstrating how you could help them. Because from that point, it should be a lot of clarification questions of making sure it covers that. That's not really an objection. It's just clarity. If you're, if there's something else in the way, like, yeah, you just missed something early on in the process.
When I was going through coaching certification, they taught us their concept called active listening, where you're having conversations. And when you're coaching somebody, you don't give them advice. You just ask them more questions and kind of guide them, or let them guide themselves, actually. But the active listening is listen to, like, they're saying something, but their face is telling you something else if you're face to face, or the tone of their voice is not matching what the words are. And that's really effective when you do that. Because you can say, wait a minute, you said you wanted to make $1 million a month next week, but you're not spending any money on marketing.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, there's the thing is like people, if you just listen to people, and it's eerie for people. Like I have a couple clients that they're like, it's really eerie how you will like spot what it is, and I never said anything about it. And if you just listen, people will tell you pretty clearly like what's in the way and what isn't working. And and it's really, if you listen intently and not like, and people will tell you pretty clearly what's in the way of them getting the results.
So what are some of the biggest challenges when you start working with somebody? What are some of the big challenges people have that you can easily clear the block?
One of the big challenges is, I think what happens when people know what they want to do and they're not quite sure. It's, I describe it as, it's like being a dog on a chain. Is, if you're a dog and you're on a chain and you have this, say you want this bone that's outside of the chain, how far you can go on the chain. And so you just run at it and, the chain grabs you and you're snapped back against the chain. And then you do it again and you run again and you're like, I can't, and the dog's getting frustrated and it's getting angry. And typically, like the dogs, it gets angry and then it's going to start barking. And really at the end of the day, it's a dog on a chain that's stuck. Is that same thing happens with business owners, is these real, and I think the best thing that I can do, I believe better than anybody else, is that if there's this chain that they don't see what it is helping them get off the chain and actually getting to where they'd like to go. Because they know where they want to go and they fought for it. Typically what happens is, the clients I work with have probably failed 5 or 10 times. And I tell them, I literally say, well, at that point, there's the listening for that it's something different. If they haven't failed yet, they're going to buy shiny objects. And I'm like, well, you need to experience buying the shiny object and still being the dog on the chain. And that sounds kind of bad, though that's just typically what happens is people, and they get angry and they can't figure out how to get off the chain. So just helping them get clear, that's really the listening and the clarity. People will tell you what the chain is and then how to kind of dissolve what's getting in the way for them. Yeah, is probably the big, at the core. That's what, everything that I do. So, and it's typically it's something different, whether it's in sales and marketing, or we're teaching people to, sell to high value customers, or, a salesperson to produce results, or it's the business owner, that's at a couple $100,000. those are easy. Those are pretty easy problems to solve if you know what to look for. The problem is they don't know what. It's just like this whole relationship part that we talked about in the beginning. They don't even know. Well, they're like, I'm good at relationships, and it's like, okay, well, tell me. I always say, well, tell me 25 people that you're referring business back and forth, or that you could go out and ask for business or help tomorrow. And that's usually like one or two, maybe. Yeah. And so it's a big difference between like living that in the real world. I've never met somebody who's struggling to sell that had those relationships ever.
Yeah, no, that's Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, all the old school sales trainers. It's all about relationships.
Yeah, definitely. So that, working on that and then creating an experience, I'd say the most important thing that I've learned in sales, my mentor took one company from 3 million to 120 million. I've helped, I want to say last time I looked, it was like 120 something million that I'd helped people sign in business, or that we've signed. And at the core of it, so much of it is, how do I create, most people have a hard time getting in front of qualified people. So that's why they're out buying all these different plans. And really it's just creating that experience that you can duplicate. Because I always say, if you're uncomfortable going into a networking room and you don't think you could go into a room with people and walk out of there with business or good opportunities, well, something's really wrong in your business and how you're approaching sales. And then if you can do that, I think personally the next best thing is LinkedIn. You're trained, they could, like, if they learn that experience, they could buy one of your trainings on LinkedIn and you could have a couple $100,000 business that easy. It's really not that hard. 6 months of work at it, and you could make $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. I had a client that, she's killing it. Like she just does LinkedIn. She makes 30. I think her best month was 80,000, just 30,000 a month on LinkedIn. What does she do? She just goes out and builds relationships.
Yeah. And if you have trouble with relationships, I was in BNI for years, Business Networking International. That's the thing. You go locally, you go every Friday or whatever day of the week for 2 hours, and you bring leads for other people. You don't go there to get business. You go there to give referrals.
Yeah.
So the whole motto is givers gain. It's all about, I'm going to give you business, and in return, business will eventually come back to me.
Yeah, and you look at like what if that works for you. I always say if you can make that work for you, that's the time to start doing a lot of online stuff. Is when you can make like the network and all of that work, because at that point, one, it's clear what you do. You've created the experience, and then you have clarity of how to sell it. Most people that start online, they have no clarity on how to sell what they're doing, and they think that LinkedIn's doing leads on LinkedIn and saying I'm this big guru is going to solve the problem, and it really masks, it covers up the problem, so it perpetuates over and over again. So they buy Facebook ads, and then those don't work, so they hire another Facebook guy and another expert. It's the dog on the chain. I have a client he's doing really well now. He's $1 million earner, and I was the 7th person that he hired. Our company was the 7th person he hired in marketing. And he'd hired all the a lot of the quote unquote experts out there, and it's like, and what finally got him results is, instead of like just taking his money, I sat him down and said, hey, look, this doesn't work, and this is what's missing. And if you want to work with me, you got to do this. And if you don't, that's fine. That's the only way I can help you. And yeah, it's just at the core, it has to be you have to use this. And then if you use LinkedIn, how it's really there to build relationships and make a difference for people, then it'll work like in 6. It'll almost be so productive. We've kind of been working on this, and it's like in 6 months, if people are going out on LinkedIn and building relationships and focusing on long term, they don't even need that much work in 6 months. I tell people that if in 6 months, if you're still having to buy a bunch more leads, you're doing something wrong. Now, if you have a business where you can handle a big influx of business, like you need a bunch of customers, lower ticket, that's different though. If you're a one-on-one coach or you're the sole service provider, and in 6 months you're still like having to buy, a lot of traffic instead of having relationships, something's wrong. And just look at like what's wrong instead of buying another shiny object.
So take me through a typical day on LinkedIn.
A typical day on LinkedIn for me. Oh, this is a good one. So we outsource it. We outsource it to ourselves. So what do we do? Because it's a service. We provide it as a service. So what I realized about LinkedIn is it's all about touch points, and all lead generation is all about touch, the number of touches. So a typical day on LinkedIn is, my assistant will do 50 to 100 touches on my profile, just building relations, sending messages, building relationships, creating value. Typically 50 touches comes to be about one to two, people reaching out, want to have a conversation. We'll talk to, from that, I'll usually talk to about 50% on the phone. And then, probably 1 out of 5, I'm going through the numbers in my head. 1 out of 20 of those people that we go out and they respond back turn into a client. So very quickly it gets to the point where you're like, oh, I don't need, very many of these. So that's the only thing bad about that service is you teach people how to sell really well, and they're like, just slow it down. I got too much. What we figured out, we actually had to start training their salespeople to do it, because we'd train ourselves out of business, which is okay. We'd do the work, and there's the thing is, like, there's nothing wrong with being so. I'm sure you've learned this too about LinkedIn, is you just do such a good job that they're like, all right, I got so much business. I like, thank you. And,
yeah.
And that's, it's funny what happens to people that do this well.
When you do it right, you have too much business, or you can just control it. So I need a couple more clients. You crank up step on the gas a little bit.
Yeah. And that's always what, that's such the value, when I look at like what you do, and I think, like, I hope everybody knows, like, the value of the systems that you create. Now, if you want to hard sell people, yeah, it's not going to work. Though, if you want to build relationships, and like how you teach it, or, I read the book, I've seen your programs, how you teach it, that's all you need. It's like you just follow it. And I think people probably think something's missing there. I have this all the time. It's like, yeah, we just teach them, and they're like, nah, I don't know if you have this. They're like, no, Ted, you got to be leaving something out here. I can't really just do this and like have the exact business that I want and spend an hour. If somebody spends an hour and a half a day on LinkedIn, like, that's the best lead generation. And they're like, no, it can't be that easy. You gotta have something else to sell to me, or you have to be selling me into some upsell.
Like you said in the Facebook post earlier today, I'm going to share all my secrets. I said, I don't have any secrets.
It's hilarious. Like, people are like, that's always, people are like, because I'm a big believer in making stuff so simple. Any of the products that we've ever came out, and I'm not really a product guy, though we do it just to be helpful and to serve more people. And everybody goes, well, you make it so simple, it's like something's missing, or people have called up and it's like, is that it? And I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. Like, that's all you have to do. And for some people, they're like, no, I got to make it, it's almost like they have to make it more complex than this. And those are the people that are continuing to buy program after program and not getting results. So one, they're not very, they're not, it's the same thing. We're in the business of long-term customers, and they'll do that. And they will go and buy something else, or believe something's missing. And it's part of just how the brain's wired. And those are the people that bump along and have a hard time breaking 100,000 a year. And that's just, you just look at the core of it. It's like, how could I grow a business? Well, I'd go and learn how to sell. I could spend, I don't know what your price point is, probably $5,000 on one of your courses right now. I could learn how to sell. And it's like, that's all you need. That's it. You're like, yeah, that's 100,000. You don't need anything else. You just need to get really good at that process. That's assuming you're already good at your service. That's it. Build relationships, 6 months, you have more business. And I know we're making it so simple, and everybody's probably going to go, oh, I need these shiny things. Maybe we should talk about shiny objects.
There we go. We can create a $20,000 product for them.
There you go. Well, I do have this upsell behind, and you're going to get the link coming in 12 seconds. No, I'm kidding.
That's right.
And that's what's funny about, in all these long-term relationships that I have is, we just help people. We help people. I don't know how many people we've either hired on our team or that now we're in long-term business relationships, and it all just started just contributing, going out, making a difference for them. Not always having to have, I remember some person did this the other day, and he's like, he's so big about, unless I was buying something, like he didn't want to get on the phone or like specific agenda. And I said, I like to, I want to get to know people. And he kind of was like, well, you probably, true story. This is interesting. He's like, probably can't afford me. And I laughed because this is actually the person, cost him probably 20 grand a month for a client of mine. And I'm just like, what the? I literally was like, what are you doing? I just stopped talking to him. And, and you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Focus on one relationship a day and you'll have more business than you can handle.
Yeah. Or referral. And then you'll like my client, one of the other things I've learned is if I don't want to if I have any clients that I'm speaking to regularly and it's someone, great, you drank water. I've been looking at my water over there going, can I drink it? If I have clients, like long-term relationships with people, and I'm like, if I don't want to like hang out with them, something's wrong with the clients I'm attracting. Like we were sitting here before this talking about skiing, and we're like, wow, we're friends and we'll probably go skiing. Maybe 5 years from now we'll have some bit. You never know. Though it's like if I'm hanging out with people I don't enjoy, what am I doing in business, really?
Yeah, we work too hard. We've got a couple minutes left. If you have questions for Bryan, type them in the chat window while you grab some water. And you mentioned something about the dog and the chain. That's another way you provide excellent value for people, your newsletter. So people go to bryanrider.com and sign up for his newsletter because he tells amazing stories in his newsletter.
Yeah. Go to the blog and opt in for the invisible selling. I split test 2 titles. So I do a little marketing here. It's either invisible influence template or stealth pitch template, depending on what split test you're on. And it's just really, creating value in a community and sharing. I think something interesting happens, and I notice you do this as well, is when you build relationships, you don't have to like constantly be hot. You just share everything you do. We're running a promotion to, sell this course, and like, I'm going to just literally after it's done, like give all the numbers, all the Facebook ad spend and just give it. I'm like, okay, and what I've learned is people can copy it and they could even take out the same templates, and it's the relationships I've created. And always, though you share the process, there's a lot of value in sharing the process with people. And then also they have to have their own unique way to create relationships. Otherwise, it's just a process.
Yeah. And I like what you say. You measure everything you do. Every time you do something on LinkedIn, how many times you have to do it to get a client.
Yeah. It's, it's 300 and typically, we have some client accounts we manage there. And it's typically between 300 and about 550 touches per sale. That's just historically our numbers. And I learned that from, the $120 million business. And I've had 4 businesses that cracked $2 million, and you just learn it's that predictable. And if you're doing that and you're not making sales, well, there's something missing in the relationship or how you're communicating value. And it's, I think LinkedIn personally, if I was training somebody, I would use LinkedIn. And I think, we did this like a little bit ago, and I think it's literally the easiest way to test a business idea. You can write your profile. You can spend 20 hours actually doing the messages and everything, and you're going to know if your idea works or not. You don't have to pay 10 grand or $20,000. You can go out and do it yourself. Just buy a program, buy a good program. What's the program that you teach that on? Like to do the profiles and the messaging campaigns? I forget your program.
Yeah, Linked Accelerator.
Yeah. You go buy Linked Accelerator, and you go do that, and you see what relationships happen. And if you're not getting an appointment, every 50 touches that you do, something's missing. You know, your messaging, it's your offer. And it's literally like when we teach people, it's like, okay, your offer's off. If you're not building relationships and in every 50 messages, there's not one person reaching out that's interested in getting on the phone, your offer's off. It's very simple. It's now you can like, and if your offer's off, doesn't matter what marketing you put on it, never going to work.
So it's kind of like if you owned a brick and mortar store and you did some advertising, got people to come into your store, but they never bought. You have the wrong products. Yeah. But if they're not getting to your front door, there's a problem with the front part of the ads.
Yeah, it's that simple. It's always like, okay, well, is the marketing or the offer? If I'm getting on the phone, something in the sales process, something in where I created value, how I'm coming across. If people haven't reached out, the offer or you haven't communicated your value clear enough. And that's it. I mean, I wish we could, you look at that, and once that gets down, really what we do, because this is really, that'll get you to $100,000, $200,000. And then we're really, if you're buying media or something like that, we're really in the business of, in a marketing company. And I know some of the things you do is helping somebody go from 100 to 200 to 1 million. Well, that's totally different problem. And that you have to create leverage. And, we didn't talk much about your magazine. That's like, that's a great spot. When you've shown it works, now you can create leverage with it. Though until that happens, you got to stay with like the core basics. Yeah.
Crawl before you walk, walk before you run.
Mm-hmm. And people want to run. It's like trying to run with a broken leg. It just, it just doesn't. I wish we, I keep saying, I wish we could make it more complicated. And we look at, we honestly should say why people make it more complicated is to make more money. It's real clear. Like, you just keep making it more and more to buy, or you can just be honest with people and go, well, I've learned if I help somebody, if somebody pays me a little bit of money, and we've talked about, both of us do this. If somebody pays you a little bit of money and you help them, they will keep buying from you over and over again. You solve this problem.
We both do this. If we are on a sales call and we see it's not a fit for us or them, we turn down the business when they want to hire us a lot of times.
Yeah. And then they email you back and ask, because people aren't used to that. And it's simple. And it's like, I never wonder why you're being successful, because you create value, you turn people away, and then you look at like what's in their best interests. Yeah. And if somebody's not, not a good fit, you're like, hey, this isn't a great fit. That's fine. Or they don't want to go out and do the core, and go, for your program, and they don't want to like go do. Because how much is that? I don't even know how much that is anymore. Your linked accelerator.
You get the replays for $297.
Okay, so $297. If they follow that for $297, and it's like, that's super cheap to start a business, and you just stay in it, you do the work. Well, that'll open up other opportunities. Yeah, that's it. It doesn't take. Hey, you can get coached, and that's great. Though, if you're just starting out, buy something like that and execute on it. And it works. That's it.
It's all about helping people out and being consistent. So how do we get in touch with you, Bryan, to learn more about you? This has been great. We're already past the top of the hour. We can go on for days and talk.
You notice I'm a relationship guy. Man, see me in the Middle East. It's funny. Well, in the Middle East, true story. You might have to go there 6 times and build relationships before you ever talk any business. So probably the best way. If somebody's here and they'd like to, talk with me, just send me an email at Bryan, Bryan, at bryanrider.com, or send Ted an email and he'll forward it to me. I hope you get like 1,000 of these too.
There we go.
Bryan, Bryan, at bryanrider.com. I didn't put the thing on the bottom. I'm not too much of a tech guy. And just send me an email if you found someone of value. Ask questions. Or
definitely go to this blog and sign up for the newsletter too, because you get some incredible learning. It's great value.
Yeah. The new webinar series that we're getting ready to, because if you're on there, you're going to see some of the new webinar series, and so much of it is about this process and just like how it works, and then also like why, there's some real numbers to support this way of selling. You're really getting after 10% of the market instead of the 3% of the market if you're hard selling or you're just asking for the sale. So there's you triple the market size, and you get to that market before they get in kind of the feeding frenzy. Because if you wait for people to get into, it's like in real estate, if you wait for people that are, getting ready to list their house, it's a price war and all of that happens. Now, if you catch them before, 6 months before, and you build the relationship, they'll never get to that part of the market.
Right.
And it talks about, the new webinar really talks about that, because that's the biggest game changer. If I look at, 4 $2 million businesses, I look at like traveling in the Middle East and making things work. It's always that piece that people figure out. And then they don't have to be flashy or have this big web presence. They just, they sell on referral. Like my coaching, referral, all referral based, fills up pretty soon. Like, probably next month, it'll just be waiting list.
Cool. Hey, well, thanks for your time, Bryan. This has been awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And we'll talk soon. We'll plan our ski trip for next year.
Master, we should do some event. Everybody here, if you actually, send Ted an email if you want to do an event as an excuse to ride off a ski trip. I'm in.
Awesome. Oh, great. Thanks for your time. Right. We'll talk soon.
All right. Talk to you soon.